Welcome in everybody. We got a special episode today for you here on the AXiS Live channel. We're going to be talking about the new, we'll be talking with two of my favorite people in all of cryptocurrency. First and foremost, I'll be talking with Markable, who's the art director on the project for the ALiVE smart contract, which is coming here in November. And joined also by Crispy Man from hexfire.io, and we have some cool new tools that we're going to kind of unveil for you to give more insight into the thought process behind the system. So this what we're going to be talking about today is it's the brainchild of the developer who invented Communis, which is the first ever automatic marketing machine that's been built on top of Hex. So if you don't know what Communis is or how it works, that would be a good place to probably start the conversation around what we have built here now with ALiVE. And it's based for those that have been following the Johnny Sachs and the secret weapon protocol and what Communis really means for Hex long term. You're going to probably gravitate towards the AXiS ALiVE system and understand it quicker than the other guys. So what we think we've accomplished here is both a proof of concept for the Hex Fusion, but also a lever to play out what would happen in HexCom anyway, but on an accelerated rate. So it's twofold in its purpose. One is to show you that HexCom will work and does work, and the second part is to bond it to COM, AXiS ALiVE, bond that system to COM to accelerate its price growth so that long-term Hex stakers can get more rewards from the system. And hopefully this leads to solving the demand problem for Hex staking and creates like a unsatiable demand for long-term committing to both of these systems. So the art director, Markable, has been working on a video, concepting it out, building a framework and skeletoning it with me. And we've been building it out for maybe 6 to 8 weeks or something like that. I think the development on that video started at the end of August or early September. And so it's been a whole new attempt at doing stuff that Markable had never done before with 3D modeling and animations. And so this, I believe that this is the best video that Markable's ever made, and probably it's one of, if not the best videos that's ever come out of the Hex community as a whole. And so I'm going to make a case for that today. You guys will see it and we'll go through it step by step. And then after that, we'll talk a little bit about ALiVE with Crispy Man and how some of the tools that he's built can give us insight and how we can use it to be more effective to hit our goals. And our goals are to make both AXiS ALiVE and HexCom more valuable and create more demand for those systems. So without further ado, I'm going to bring them online now. Welcome in Proof of Beard and Crispy Man from hexfire.io.
Hello. Hey now.
Hey now.
So you guys are no strangers to seeing my face around in the back. We have a small little team that we use to dominate our little sector of the Pulse Chain network, and I would say that we've been working together now for over 2 years now. I would say more or less, and it's been a process, and I know that putting up with me has been really, really fun, as you can imagine, because I'm so demanding. But what do you guys, outside of your own personal biases and your own personal holdings, I'd like if you guys could each just give us a little 5-minute spiel. Maybe we'll start with Mark and then we'll go to Chris on what is ALiVE, and is it even worth doing? What is your honest, unbiased opinion of the work that's been done here and what's to come?
Good question. Well, the overarching idea that I like is that it has something to do with Hex, and it has something to do with value creation and trying to improve the infrastructure of what we believe is the best form of monetary value. What I've been seeing a lot in crypto over the past years is that most people are just doing things, pressing buttons, and nothing really builds, let's say. It's just a lot of energy impulses, let's say. And there's people that make money, and there's fireworks everywhere, and it's interesting. But most of the time, things in crypto just they explode and then they die. And I think that's a reflection of how the world is and how people tend to live and tend to make choices. But there's a small section of people around in this world that actually have long-term commitments and have long-term ideas and plans, and they are executing on that. The funny thing is that most of the time you don't see anything about it until it's there, and yeah, but it's very valuable, and we need these kinds of people that keep building, so that we have nice things in the future. Now, ALiVE, although at first I didn't really understand it, and I was just thinking, oh, there we go again. We have another coin, and I don't know why we would need this. But as I started to learn about it and understand the mechanics, and especially the last two weeks, actually, I started to understand. Oh wait, we can actually do something valuable here, as in to prove something that has been misunderstood for a long time. Since the creation of Communis, it has been misunderstood, including me. I had no idea, and now I understand Communis a lot better and how it could actually help hacks in a profound way. Yeah, so I think ALiVE is a very interesting new thing to that can teach people a new depth in the hex ecosystem, and I hope that it kind of turns other people on into building things on hex and be more collaborative and future minded, let's say, that we can all build together actually lasting and valuable things instead of distracting each other with random stuff that has nothing to do with value creation. Yeah,
I often feel like that with kind of the meme culture, that unless it's one of like the dozen or so memes that go on to be multi-billion-dollar market caps that have sustainable, like, long-term adoption, that most of that whole space is just here today, gone tomorrow.
it's dopamine farming. It's kind of like social media or other
it's definitely
addictions.
ease off of instant gratification. And so, like, in the design process of ALiVE and Calm, for that matter, we wanted to scratch that itch. You don't want to, like, run away from the market. The market's saying, like, there is a market here for instant gratification in dopamine hits. And so, like, we, instead of like demonizing it, like, we found a way to leverage it to get more short-term people into something to hopefully convert and become a long-term player in a system, or a long-term committed user of a system. And so, like, with both Hex, Calm, and with AXiS ALiVE, both systems have a component that pays you immediately upon committing. And I think that's important because it gets people, it reduces a person's risk to adopt something. So it's like, hey, what is the right amount to pay somebody to adopt your system? Like, what makes your, like, this system better than 90% of other cryptos? Well, part of it is, like, you can literally incentivize adoption through the free market. And it's something we call the free market floating rebate, or the instant rebate. That's determined by the price of ALiVE and the price of Calm, which is a function of what the market decides it's worth. And the other part of that is, like, once that somebody comes in and decides, like, okay, maybe if I get half my money back, that's enough for me to come in and participate in the system and reduce my risk by half. And now they're in for a long period of time. So they don't have a choice anymore. They're committed. And if the system works as intended and the dynamics on the LP side and the scarcity element is locked in, well, the system should appreciate, because the system's getting increasingly more valuable on the notion of just supply and demand. If there's less supply and equal or consistent demand, if you're paying people just enough so that demand is constant or increasing and the amount of supply is constant or decreasing, that's a supply demand imbalance. And you can basically brute force these supply demand imbalances. And we've found the formula for it. And we're trying to launch this new system to leverage that, so that you're scratching the itch of both instant gratification and long-term commitment at the same time. So with that in mind, Crispy, what do you want to add to the conversation?
Yeah, well, I'm listening to you guys talk about what you're thinking. So your question to start with, is this even worth doing? So this is crypto, it's DeFi, right? I'm pretty heavy into Hex, and that's my my mainstay. So I've said this before on a bunch of streams and different things, but here's my thing is, like, I'm very much a believer in Hex and Hex staking. I know that isn't for everybody. Don't hate me. But I'm a believer in that. And the comp system actually, provides that instant rebate, for the people who believe in the Hex system. And so when you call it a automated marketer, that's exactly what it is. It's, when people go out and they actually purchase or swap for COM, it makes the COM price juicier, which perhaps more people will buy, or swap into Hex and stake Hex, and therefore to get more COM, right? And because of the dynamics of how that's tied together, it's been very interesting, right? That can be the case, that somebody can get 10% value back, 8%, whatever the number is, of an instant rebate. So we look at Hex first. That's kind of what I'm thinking about. And so I was really, really surprised that Kodiak approached you originally about this, right? Because Kodiak is the dev behind COM. But here's the thing with COM, Hex is so big and it's over such a long time span, right? How could we prove to people, other than, walking through with them individually, that the COM instant rebate works? Right. So this is my angle of why I like ALiVE, right? And why I'm interested. So this idea of taking a very similar approach to a different set of tokens, to be able to show it in real time, is very intriguing, right? Because for me, what I'd like to see is to be able to show that proof. And I'll do it myself, but I mean, if other people would join in and help with the Hex ecosystem with COM, that would be awesome. With more liquidity and driving demand and all that type of stuff, because I think ultimately it helps Hexicans. And so ALiVE in part will help prove that out directly in process, because it's a very similar setup, right? The other part of it is, I don't know all the details of how this might all work out, but I'm guessing there'll likely be liquidity pairings with AXiS and ALiVE, which will show how, scarcity of supply can affect volatility, which is good for the guys who want to trade. I'm not a big trader, but I mean, the people who want to trade will have that opportunity. And then, the idea that we already have a pretty strong link between AXiS and COM today in terms of liquidity. And COM's got pretty low liquidity. Anything that helps the AXiS ecosystem will help drive COM up. And then maybe there's some other stuff that'll come. I don't know. We'll see.
Yes. And so again, I see that the numbers are starting to come up a little bit. People are starting to join in. Remember that the whole reason why we're doing this system is because it's going to adjust Hexican mindsets. It's literally me pointing at you, the staker class. Like, the staker class needs to change the way they're thinking about Hex. So many of the biggest Hex stakers don't pay attention to anything going on X. They don't pay attention to any of the community anymore. Like, we're talking like the top dogs in Hex, the top 100, 150 guys. Most of them have given up on the staking concept, and they're looking for the exit at the end of this cycle, or on route to the end of this cycle. So over the next 3-year bull market, large majority of dolphin-sized hex stakers and higher are already looking for the exit door, and I know this because I hear the conversations. And so that's okay. Like, that's kind of what you want to see, because these guys have given up on the real principles of why hex was created anyways. So yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say advertisement for Hex hasn't changed, still does what it did 4 years ago.
That's right. Hex is exactly, yeah. I mean, Hex is doing the same thing it was designed to do from the beginning, and better on Pulse Chain than it ever could have dreamed of doing on Ethereum with the gas problem. And that's another component of Calm and AXiS ALiVE, that all three of those tokens have solved the gas problem and actually help you pay the gas fees if you have stuff trapped on Ethereum still. So these systems are also trying to enrich you in ways that they can make your whole bag, profitable again too. And but that's a small aspect of what's going on here. So what I was saying was, let me just finish this thought, Chris, and then I'll let you piggyback off. Look, the staker class is very much a well and alive on the smaller spectrum, like the new guys coming in that want to participate in staking and try to get a capture part of that T-share yield. And then there's a small percentage of the guys in the upper echelons of hex stakers that they're long-term maxi believers in hex, and they're not going anywhere. They're going to be earning more hex than anyone else for forever. But there's this middle portion of guys that they all want to take their millions off at the top of this cycle. And so what this can potentially do is, there's going to be a natural this is outside of the scope of just AXiS ALiVE, but there's going to be a redistribution event that occurs over the next like 2 and 3 years, where a lot of that old hex that's in old hands is going to get redistributed out to like thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of new stakers that's going to come into the system to chase the green candles as the stuff goes parabolic. And so all we want to do is encourage people through this instant rebate mechanic and prove it through AXiS ALiVE that you can get additional adoption and convince more and more people to stake longer, because they're going to be getting instantly rewarded for their behavior, for their good long-term behavior, which uplifts the whole system and makes the whole system more valuable on the long term, because you're pushing so much hex out into the future.
Yeah, I think on that point that you just made about the hex stakers is funny, because I feel like the staker base for hex has been pretty solid, right? And I know, sure, we see lots of stuff going on with people doing different things, and so some of us might be like, no, that's not true, because we look XX, wallet dumped and blah blah blah, right? But in general, you look at existing stakes, we have not seen capitulation. Right, we've seen some capitulation, but you don't see half the people merging end stake and getting out as soon as they get value, right? Instead, what you're seeing is this continuous adoption. People continuing to participate, particularly the larger players with shorter stakes, that type of thing. I do think that they're missing out in the long term, because I don't see a lot of dolphin sharks at today's levels doing long T-shares, which is their loss, right? I'd be a little short-sighted, because I'm really kind of pushing on that idea myself. Like I really, this, could keep talking about it, but the idea of having stakes out 15 years, kind of scary. But for my long strategy, I think that works just fine. And, as far as risk reward, it's off the chart, right? In that way. And so again, this does tie back. Listen, I have no illusions that there'll be benefits. Of course, there'll be benefits to the AXiS token by burning AXiS right within that ecosystem. But again, I come back to this idea that being able to prove out the confusion really well will help incentivize doing more Quattro Cincos. I never thought I'd be the guy that would come on stream and be like, yeah, the only stake that makes sense is a Quattro Cinco. It's like, but now that's what I'm saying, because it's qualified with the fact that I have a ladder already set up, and so I already have rungs that come out, and I have a broader plan. But damn, if you don't you get the maximum amount of calm for doing the longest stake, right? So something like 28x more calm by going Quattro Cinco. Not to mention the other benefits that come from other things like Hedron and and other items that might be created later. And the fact that in the at least in the Hex ecosystem, the super long staking is at its low right now. It's at a lull and a low. So what does this all mean? Well, I think again, what we see with AXiS and ALiVE is that if I quote unquote lock up my AXiS for the longest amount of time, I get the greatest reward, right? And so while the details might differ a little bit, I think we're going to be able to show in real time that if I burn some AXiS and then the rest is locked for say 8 years, right? And I receive a portion of my ALiVE up front that's an instant value. Yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting if I can do that. If I can put $100 of AXiS in and burn it and get $100 up front because of the current market, because maybe there's 100% coupon rate, that's going to be really interesting to show the incentive. Like, why would I do that? Right. And we all know, I think most of us listen know, I mean, yeah, I might be the first guy, theoretically gets there with $100 worth of ALiVE, right? And sells it down. So yeah, the price will go down. So the next person won't get that. But it has now created a lower price for somebody else who wants to get it without burning AXiS, and then creates this little cycle for the people who do want to try ratio trading. They want to do that type of stuff, which isn't something I promote. But I listen, for me to tell you guys that people aren't trading on bullshit is like, come on. I mean, people are doing that all over the place. So in a way, that's that. But I do think we're going to be able to prove that that this type of a mechanism can help ratchet up, right? Because you're going to be using, and I guess the direct comparison is ALiVE providing instant rebates for AXiS, for locking AXiS, is very similar to that COM approach.
Yep. So before we get too far into the weeds on like mechanics and game theory, we'll probably demo the front end for you guys. So that'll be like a first. We'll do that soon within the next few minutes. But before we go in and demo the front end and let people ask questions on how this thing works mechanically and why it is important to Hex, we're going to show off the sizzle video, right? That Markable's been working on for so long. And then we'll just go through like so first we'll do the sizzle video. I'll let Mark speak on that, and maybe we'll do like a quick scene by scene run through afterwards, and then we'll talk a little bit about the main bullet points of what this system does and why there's opportunity for somebody who has zero AXiS to come in, and maybe play this game, because it's really designed for every investor profile. That's something that was part of the design intention as well. So it's like it's designed to help old AXiS whales that have huge bags, but it's also designed to give the little guys meat on the bone to play that game. And it's anyone who's familiar with Hex staking, this is going to feel very, 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 very familiar. And I would say that this is probably one of the only systems that's both competition for Hex and COM, but also synergistic with Hex and COM at the same time by bonded liquidity. And we'll make a case for that toward the very end when we show you guys the liquidity web and how that's going to be set up. So I hope you guys enjoy this stream. I know it's been a lengthy, meaty intro. I'm going to go ahead and play Mark's live promo video. So enjoy.
Yeah.
Good work. Good work. I'm really happy with the way that turned out, man. And I know I pushed you pretty hard to do some cool new stuff, and you guys can clearly see the level of quality in that video. So that's going to be, it's live on Twitter. You guys can go check that out. Do you want to like maybe talk a little bit about the process of building it, and maybe I'll pull up a side panel and we'll just kind of scroll through each scene.
Yeah, sure. It took a while, and there was a lot of headaches involved. And yeah, it's funny. Every time I make a video, I've been making videos for this community for like about 3 years now, a bit more maybe even. And every video just brings me to a new level, I think. Every time I try something new, most of the times, I try different techniques. And I think as far as pushing different techniques, this one has been the most technically advanced, I would say. And I'm very proud of this video. You definitely pushed me to something like if that's the interesting thing. People come up to me and say, "Hey, make a video." I'm like, "Okay, cool. We can make a nice video." But sometimes I don't get any feedback. I don't get any input of what should be better or what could be better or thoughts of the person paying me. It's like, okay, what are we doing now? And what I have with you is that you keep bringing different ideas, and we actually have conversations about what we could do better, and that makes for better videos, and it makes for more meaningful videos as well, and something that actually can stand the test of time, where you can just keep on using it. A video gets more valuable as you give meaning to it, like
I think that's something to say for your ability to build a brand, right? So even when it came to like, he not only did Mark build this kind of video for the ALiVE system, but I mean his mark is, no pun intended, is all over the AXiS ALiVE brand.
everything you watch from
all the
when
and all the
the
video
stream starts.
content that's animated video, that's all done by Mark. And so AXiS ALiVE, the brand, is basically two people that have worked on the art side of it, and Mark is one of them. And he didn't just build this video and all this other video content. He's also helped actually design the front end, which you guys are about to see probably for the first time, some of you. The commitment front end and the other additional pages that are going to get unveiled later on next week. It's been a major focus to make sure that the brand is cohesive, and that when you see an AXiS ALiVE thing, that it's clear that it's you can recognize that brand from a mile away. Like there's no it's distinct, right? So you can tell that Mark made it. So yeah, I'm really happy with it, and I think like that really translates well when it comes to your art and design styles. Like you can see it in the video content and in the front end that it's all cohesive and it works well.
Yeah, it's just one part, and I couldn't do it any other way. Basically, when we were making the front end or the design, it kind of went. Basically, we got a first try. Okay, this is probably what it should be, and that's mainly because I've been here for a while and I know what you need and I know what it's kind of needs to look like. But yeah, what I noticed, because this was the first time I actually designed a front end, what I noticed is it's almost the same as making videos. It just needs to work. And it's just it shows up in a different way, but it's every little thing needs to work together. Everything needs to make sense, basically. And so that's what I did in this front end as well. It's just make everything make sense. Don't make it too complicated, but make it intricate enough that it's satisfying.
Well, and it's got to relay a lot of data, so it's got to be simple enough.
Yeah.
So this is the front end. It's come a long way from the beginning. Props to Kodiak for working on the back end and bringing life to it, and then to Markable for designing it. And so, I mean, simply put, like we can run through this and demo this whole page. And I mean, anyone that has staked hex before, this section right here probably looks quite familiar. Like this looks a lot like hex staking, and it's by design because this program is designed to pull in the staker class and help move hex forward and give it a new identity that's evolved from just simple OG go.hex.com staking. And without promising too much, there's no reason why we can't mold hex staking and COM into this front end as time goes on in the future, because these two systems are going to get more and more intertwined as time goes on. So let me break away for just a second, and before we get into the demo, let's go back to the video content, and then I'll go to the AXiS chart and why we chose AXiS, or why Kodiak chose AXiS as the principal token to build the system on top of, and then we'll get into how it helps Hex and COM and how this commitment page works. So this is like the beginning of the video, and it's basically playing off this idea that AXiS ALiVE is both a proof of concept for Hex COM, but also it's going to directly benefit COM's TVL and liquidity and its price performance, because AXiS has already done so incredibly well. It's up, it went from less than a penny all the way up to $98,000 a token, and right now it currently sits around $22,000 a token. And so it's already one of the most important tokens on the entire Pulse chain blockchain. It's performed like probably beyond the expectations of what anyone ever thought was possible before Pulse chain launched, including myself. And so it's like the perfect token to leverage going into this next into the second year of Pulse chain, right? Or it's actually going into our third year next year. Well, that's amazing, isn't it? And so this video that Mark made, I had him going back to this idea of like, we wanted to make sure that the design was really dialed in, and like there was high fidelity, like I don't want to say the word Hollywood, but like the cinematography was at the levels of like the most premier studios out there. And so he actually had to go out and model the 3D token here, and you can see this token as it comes into frame, like it actually animates and moves and stuff. And this is the first proof of commitment system on Pulse chain that pays you to participate. So what does that really mean? It means there's this mechanic that's built into ALiVE that when you commit AXiS, it's a one-way portal where AXiS gets burned and locked. So half of the deposit gets burned, half the deposit gets locked. That burned portion is what translates or evolves or turns into ALiVE. So like ALiVE starts at 0 tokens. There's 0 tokens to start. So really whatever value you see in ALiVE after launch, that's because somebody committed to the system for some amount of time. And it works linearly so that, if the longer you lock, the more units of ALiVE you get. So somebody could burn, 2 guys could come into the system with the same amount of AXiS, but the guy that commits for like half as long gets half as much units. But they're both held to the same standard of half the amount gets burnt. So it's interesting because the game theory is completely different from Hex in that regard, because like there's really very little incentive to not go max length, and max length in AXiS ALiVE is 8 years, which is 2 4-year cycles. And you remember that ALiVE is launching on a Bitcoin halving year and on an election year. So that's also probably going to be a key component of how these 8-year cycles play out going into the next 50 years. Like we don't know. Like I'll say this too, before we get to this point in the video, the code is modular, immutable, and audited. So it's been audited by CertiK. Even if the front end goes down, you can still write commitments and end commitments to the blockchain directly. And Kodiak has promised to make a tutorial for us so that you guys will have that ability at any point, that this is permanent code on the blockchain with no admin keys and a 0 starting supply. So like it's basically the most base, modular, immutable, audited, pristine code that you can get, that's distilled down and compressed to be the most time-tested code that you could make. This is coming from the guy that made Comp, which that code is more complex than ALiVE. So ALiVE is like a simpler version of that actually can operate on a faster rate, and we'll get into that as we go forward. Is there anything you want to say about this slide before we move forward in terms of the design of it?
Well, the design. So I think I just did it because I wanted you to have it. I just made a coin for AXiS, and I was designing it in 3D so it can actually have a golden texture and feel like it's a physical golden coin. And it turned out that it's very useful, as in we've used it everywhere in the front end, in video, in animations in Telegram. It just feels really high quality. It's really nice. And then the first scene with the hexagon, that was kind of a challenge because I was wondering, okay, so we have the hexagon fusion, and it's kind of the introduction with a different style because different colors, and we're talking about hex and com in a very quick way, let's say. And the only thing that they really had in common was the colors and a hexagon. But then, like, okay, so try to have 2 sentences of text and 2 kind of logos, and the idea of a fusion, and combine that in, I don't know what it is, 2 seconds or something, and make it so that people understand. It's pretty hard to do. And then I just started to think about fusion and create kind of like an ecosystem or an universe. And then I found that I can put some kind of energy universe in a hexagon, and it turned out really well, I think.
Boom. Then we get to this scene. So, this is an important scene because it represents the process, right, of what it's like to interact with the contract. When you make a commitment in this system, it's not that much different from Hex. I mean, in Hex, you decide how long you want to stake for, and that means that your coins go bye-bye for a long time. In Hex, you get all of your principal back plus your yield so long as you fulfill your commitment. But in AXiS ALiVE, you don't. In AXiS ALiVE, there's a lock and burn, so that the ALiVE that comes into existence is directly proportional to the amount that's being burned, which is always half of a commitment. The other half of the AXiS gets locked until your stake matures. So this is important, guys. This is like why AXiS and ALiVE are even more of a fusion than Hex and Com, because Hex and Com, Hex hyperinflates forever, but AXiS deflates forever. And that in that deflation of the AXiS community supply, the ALiVE is minted proportionally to what has been burned. So it's more of like an evolutionary process of the burned amount getting burned away and seeding the ground, and then what comes out of it is a start payout of ALiVE, and then when the stake matures, there's an end payout. So there's 3 components of payouts inside of an AXiS ALiVE commitment from the lock and the burn. There's the locked amount of AXiS, there's the start payout of ALiVE, and then there's the end payout of ALiVE. And the distinction in there is that most of the payouts in ALiVE, where that burned AXiS market cap goes, is toward the end payout. 20% or less goes to the start payout. So it's a very interesting dynamic where the whole system is based on commitment and long-term investing mindset when it comes to interacting with the contract. But that's not to say that there isn't opportunity for short-term traders to come in and ratio trade whatever's on the market for sale. And so this gets into a very interesting concept.
The cool thing, what I think, is that AXiS already basically what we've been saying a lot, it refines a set of holders, and AXiS, the token, has really done just that. What we like to talk about when we look at AXiS in the chart is that basically no one is selling. And there's a few players, but then we know, we can see those players, and we can decide our actions on those few players. And as time goes by, the set of holders keeps refining. And the cool thing is that no one can get to ALiVE except for going through AXiS or buying it on the market, which is really cool because you're transferring that quality of holders to a different set of coins, and or different kind of coin. And you're basically just, it's kind of like an expansion pack for the right people, basically, which already puts you way ahead from a lot of other coins, because now you can just launch it without any coins. And the only thing people can do to get the coins is either supported by buying it or supported by committing AXiS, which I really like that.
Yeah, so most of these other tokens, and I guess I shouldn't generalize so easily. I should be like a little more open-minded, but I would say generally most tokens that create add-on tokens, they're not transforming value. They're always inflating and diluting. And what we're not doing that. We're not inflating our coin. AXiS ALiVE is one coin that just goes through a transformation, which is why you'll notice that the name of the token is the same on both ALiVE and on AXiS. That'll be the same name, but the tickers will be different. So ALiVE just represents AXiS that's went through a burn and transformation process through time. That's it. And so most of these other tokens, they create, so there's another token that's created on top of, but not burned and emitted proportionally. So then these two coins are effectively one coin that's tethered together, which gets into the next point, which is like what's going to create a very interesting dynamics in the free market where people are going to be able to ratio trade this future valuation. Because what it does is it monetizes the time value of money, but in a different way. Because in Hex, the principal can mint more Hex forever, but in this system, half the principal gets deleted, and then the ALiVE now represents that value. But most of that new value is transported out into the future. So only a percentage of that value is going to be present now on the market in the circulating supply. Most of that's going to get pushed out for like 7-8 years into the future, because mathematically, mechanically, it doesn't make sense to actually mint ALiVE on a shorter term basis, because you're just burning up AXiS, and AXiS is already so valuable. I mean, it's got a $22,000 price tag, so it's already expensive. And it's got like a $1.4 million TVL on its main node, but then on its branch nodes like SolidX and PDI and some of these other branch nodes, I mean, you're talking like double-digit millions of TVL that is connected to it in really useful ways. You get into the layer of communists, and like now it gets very interesting about how deep that liquidity web is going to go and how high it can go on the back of Pulse Chain being successful. But this gets into the next part of the video here, which really keys off of like that kind of more speculative nature of a lot of cryptocurrency and that instant gratification. Like there's going to be a group of people, and I've talked to some of these guys, like, people that come to mind would be like Hans, who like loves taking trades on coins and really focuses on like good buying zones and trading zones and stuff. And others out there that are in part of like groups that look for meme coin plays and hype plays. Well, inside of this system, they will be able to ratio trade just these two tokens forever, because there will be a bonding between them that allows them to a really skilled trader to be able to buy low, sell high between AXiS and ALiVE and just multiply their bag over time. And so that's what this part of this video talks about, is just the ratio trading of the floating rebate. This floating rebate is an idea of like how much value a committer to the system can get from a max length commitment. So like if, and we'll get into that when we demo the front end here in a little bit, but basically like it's a way to portray to newer users or investors to crypto, like, okay, this is what you can get in terms of an instant rebate if you just take some AXiS and max length it, this is what you're going to get back in value in USD now, so that you can actually capture that value now and consider the rest that you've reduced your risk. So that's what the instant rebate's good for. Is it's good for getting solving the demand problem by giving people more of a reason to come in for the quick money or the free money in some cases. And then that floating rebate is totally dependent on where the ALiVE price is relative to the AXiS price. So if the ALiVE price is up more than it has been in recent past, then you're going to get more of an instant rebate than if it's down a lot on the ratio, because AXiS just goes up too fast, or however these prices interplay with each other over time. So ratio trading is going to be a part of this, and I expect that that's going to really increase the volume that you're going to see on both AXiS and ALiVE. Okay, so this part here, this is one of my personal favorite parts of the video, which gets into some of the pages that's going to be launched on the front end. There's going to be a whole leaderboard system that's built out with potentially extra incentives and stuff that gives you a reason to buy and commit to the system to get status inside the system, as well as like to be able to rank yourself against other top commitments. And then there's also going to be like a stats page that you can break down every single liquidity pool user, and you'd be able to break them down by class, whether they're Poseidon, whale, shark, dolphin. You'll be able to break those guys down. Click link out to DBank to track their transaction history. It's going to be the most transparent data set you've ever seen in terms of what I've seen out there. Like, nobody's doing transparency like we are in this system, because we want it to be full. We want you to be able to make the best decision as possible. So if you see one of these big ass whales start unloading his stack, well, you're going to be able to predict how much more they have left. And this would have been really useful to have before in the past, where 40 coins got dumped in a 24-hour period. Well, you would have been able to more easily see that happened and look and quickly link into that guy's DBank wallet and trace around. This is really a power user's wet dream. Guys that want to have full idea of what's going on inside this system, it's all going to be available for you guys inside of this dashboard. And this is working in the dashboard now. So like, this is ready for launch, so this is going to be really cool, right? I was, one of my requirements was, in order to launch, was to give you at least a transparent wallet database of like the top holders. And I think we went up to like the top 200 holders, and we'll expand it as the system grows over time.
Yeah, I think what's important is that this again shows that AXiS wants to build, because he's not just launching a token. He's actually creating a platform where you can have better data. And Crispy Man is very good at that. And we have a very good team now. And we really want to increase value on Pulse Chain and make it easier to find the right place to make, basically. And in my opinion, that also needs a very intuitive and satisfying and easy to use front end, because it just makes so much. It makes it so much easier when you can just click something and visually you can already see all the positions instead of having to read all kinds of data. You can literally just see in colors, or see those things that you see on the left. It's very useful to see those positions that someone has, because it can give you ideas of what you want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm super excited that you can click a guy on here. It'll pull up all of their Richard Hart tokens in the database, the solid index tokens that they hold. It'll show their liquidity positions. It'll show how much yield they're making in the different farms. So you'll be able to see all. It's basically it's like a whale watch panel where you can actually click into any one of these guys and see very, very quickly what's going on for each user. And again, if this works for AXiS ALiVE and the system is successful and gets adoption because you guys like what you're seeing, Well, there's no reason why this stuff can't be adapted for Hexcom, like more directly, like where you can give
we can build
databases
it
for
out
Hex and
for a
Com
lot.
as well, right? So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be engaging. We do live in the modern attention economy, and so this system is directly targeted at both short-term gratification and short-term value investors and short-term traders and long-term value investors, so that there's meat on the bone for both types of people, that they can both coexist in a place that's ultra competitive, but it doesn't require you to have to participate in any which way. For example, you could never ever buy AXiS at all or commit AXiS at all to the system, and you could literally just buy ALiVE when the instant rebate came down to like a smaller number. So I'll give you an example right now. So let's just change the price of ALiVE. So in this example, guys, the AXiS price is currently $10,939, and this is on testnet. So this isn't a live price. But right here, you can see that the testnet price of AXiS is $10,939. Okay, so we'll start there. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here to I have a dev override. I can pretend that the ALiVE price is different. So let's make that the live price $3. Let's say it launches at $3 on day one. So this instant rebate meter shoots all the way down. So if I was to commit $1,000 of of AXiS for the maximum length of time, I'm only getting 7.89% back in my instant rebate to start. Now that's at a $3 price point. But if all of a sudden the price point changes and it goes and does a 10x and goes to $33, for example, now the instant rebate's 88%, and that's because the ratio between $33 and $10,930 it closes the gap between them, so it makes these ALiVE worth more. Now, if it goes, and then let's just say, like, I'll just say, let's say that we have a hype wave and it goes to like $330 in the first few days. Now a max length commitment should pay, hold on a second. So now a max length commitment would pay 868%. So obviously there's going to be times where it's brain dead not to come in, buy AXiS off market, commit it to the system because the arbitrage is so high. There will be periods where the ALiVE price is so overvalued that you can get free money out of the start payout, basically.
So that people understand that basically happens at the 100% mark, and because from then on your start payout is 100% of what you put in. So by that point you're basically just printing money. And the cool thing is that if something like that would happen, the only thing you're doing is buying AXiS and burning it off of the market. You're just burning it. So there's a limit to how long that can happen. And because the AXiS supply is already so scarce, if that would happen and you would just keep on selling your ALiVE for AXiS and doing it again, you're basically just bringing down the ALiVE price, but you can't keep on doing that. So in exchange for pushing down the ALiVE price temporarily, you are burning AXiS permanently. And so the downside for ALiVE will always be temporary, because you can't keep on doing that, basically. And while you're doing that, you're making yourself richer, but you're also increasing the scarcity within the entire ecosystem. So you're helping your environment as well, which is pretty cool.
This is a good question about, is a ladder a feasible strategy? And I would say that, my personal opinion, what I would do with my own personal coins would be, you could start by doing an 8-year commitment to get the most amount of ALiVE now to play with in the short term. But then every year after that, or maybe every 6 months after the launch day, you would do another 8-year commitment, so that forever you're going to mint perpetual max length commitments. It's sort of similar to my theory about if I'm in a stake in hex, I'm either going short or I'm going max length, and I'm not really going in the middle so much. I'm not saying that ladders are obsolete, and especially in hex, ladders are not obsolete. But in AXiS ALiVE, because every commitment has to burn half the amount of the commitment, it actually only really makes sense to go to the max amount of time because if you go shorter, you're burning the same amount for less units of ALiVE. So it just doesn't, you're really playing a risky game if you go short. So even though you can go let's say, let me change the price back to $33 where it's at today. So at $33 per ALiVE, you get an 88% rebate. Now, if I switch this down to 2,000 days instead of 2921. Okay. Your ROI goes down because you're getting less units. So you went from getting 28 units. Now you're only getting 19.8 units from the start payout and 82 units from the end payout. And then as you scale this down again, like 1,500 days, it scales it down linearly back the other way. So you're really playing a risky game. If you think that the system of both AXiS and ALiVE appreciates for 8 years on average, let's say 50% per year for 8 years, well then, yeah, I mean, you could go shorter and still make money, but you won't get the maximum amount of units. And in a game that's all based on units, the only thing I can say for certain is that you always want to play on the long end, or you want to wait for some other guy to come in behind you and sell their ALiVE position off and push this instant rebate down so that you can come in and buy their cheap coins.
I think we talked about this for hours and hours and hours, just thinking about, okay, so should we change something so that people would also make like a ladder, like short-term commitments, or do we want to push it all to the back? And yeah, basically what we landed on is that it's probably better if everything, like all the incentive is to do the max length commitment. Because if you want to do the shorter term stuff, now you're incentivized. Like if you only want to do short term, you're more incentivized to trade the rebate rate, and so that also increases participation in the market, and it creates a more lively ecosystem and a more lively bond between AXiS and ALiVE. And so you can do that. It's just there's different ways to play it, and this is not the same system as Hex. So there's different rules, and you could make a ladder, but the ladder is going to look different than from what you are probably thinking right now.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Oh, by the way, he even made, when I say he, the boys, they even made light mode for all you psychos out there that like light mode.
The psychos. I went out of my way to design a light mode.
That's pretty.
I'm not a psycho.
So yes, there is light mode.
It was painful to design the light mode.
You can use this on mobile as well. So it's all modular and it'll work on mobile on the front end here. So let's get back to the video.
Yeah, cool.
There's another component that is less talked about that I haven't said a lot about yet because I'm trying to keep some of this close to the chest, but there is a plan to make high reward APR farms on some of our favorite dexes. In a perfect world, we'd get the blessing of Richard and his admins, and we'd get a PulseX V2 farm in the future. If the system's successful enough, we won't rule that out. But in terms of what we could actually capture now, we talked to like the 2Fucks team and the 9inch team a little bit, and we'll see what we can do about getting some gauge pools or potentially some farms for this system. Those guys, they like high volume. So obviously the things that are going to be made are going to be built with RH tickers in mind, to bring the volume that's required to get, high APY. So that's that's on the roadmap, and it should be shortly after launch. Then we get into the climb the ranks, which is there's going to be a metal system built into the front end so that you can compete for these metals.
AXiS wanted it to be a game, or like if anyone has played Call of Duty or stuff similar like that, we wanted to add some features like that, where it's just nicer to earn a medal instead of just knowing that you're top 50 or whatever. Now
I
you
mean,
have
it'd
a
be really
medal.
cool if these metals showed up as an NFT in your wallet when you finally eclipsed a new level, and that would be locked in on the blockchain forever.
Yeah, we
So
could talk about that later.
don't
but
say it's don't say it's off the table. Like, this is part of the roadmap as well. So these metals will be visible on the front end once
Yeah.
the leaderboard page goes live.
But like as an NFT, it's probably hard because you have to take it away when they don't get to. Well, okay, let's
Not
talk
necessarily.
about
If they, I think if you they, that's a good point, but we'll see. They might be able to keep it once they get it.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I'm really happy with this scene. By the way, this is the first time I made every single scene in, well, yeah, almost every scene in 3D. I use Blender for it, and I really like it, but it's been painful to learn. And now I made basically every scene in it. So that's really cool.
So this system, it monetizes time. It directly locks in with Hex and Com. So if Hex is successful, if ALiVE is successful, it's going to drag the price of Com up, which is going to make long-term Hex staking commitments more valuable because you're going to be able to get a higher instant rebate back from the Com tokenized T-share, so long as you're doing native stakes. And so this is, we're trying to create a system here that's, again, as these next slides will show, immutable, audited, and modular, so it can be built on in the future. I really liked this. I was like, hey, Mark, we got to put a whale in here somewhere because we got to represent our biggest players. This is something that you guys will see once the stats page goes live more directly. But when you start digging into the biggest AXiS holders, I mean, you're talking about somewhere from 8 to a dozen of the biggest players on Pulse Chain. We're talking about guys that have over 1 million ink, guys that have 100 billion Pulse and PulseX, just absolutely massive Pulse Chain and Hex whales, sharks, and the like. And they've gravitated towards the AXiS token because of its early price performance that was so incredible. And they became a part of that success story. And so because we have some of the biggest whales on the chain, in the system already, we wanted to pay homage to those guys and say, if you guys decide to make a commitment or come in and play the ratio trading game here, you really are swimming with some of the biggest players on the Pulse Chain.
I think that's overlooked in Pulse Chain is I think a lot of people think that you just have a token and that's basically it. But what's wildly different from your token to a lot of others is, well, your position is just so completely different from most other coins. Like, there's so much concentrated power, not just with you, but in your token because of the players that are in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think many people have no idea that it's there, which makes the opportunity even bigger.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating to see that something that is so in your face powerful. I mean, it went from a few pennies to almost 100K. I'm still joking around in your group that AXiS is gonna reach 100K before Bitcoin does, because it could. And how insane is that? Like, what? There's just so many aspects that could have, like, it's hard to find a combination of all these things coming together. And that's why I told you, I think a few days ago, that you're basically the only one that has the potential to pull something off like ALiVE, because you can't just make a coin like that and then think it's going to succeed. You need a very well thought out and executed position. And the AXiS coin is proof that now it could be time for something like this, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's like that's partly why I think Kodiak, targeted this token, and I'll put it on log here. So
Yeah, because he chose you, right? Or
yeah, it wasn't me. Yeah, I didn't. I always wanted to build something on it, but it wasn't until it wasn't until Kodiak approached me that it was like, yeah, it just made sense right away. And the cool part that I think goes missed on most people is like the opportunity that presented itself was the opportunity to do something really, really special. And it started with this incredible price performance, right? So this thing that someone on the internet coined it as like proof of loyalty, and I thought that was really cool because it's like, in a way, that's exactly what AXiS was all about from the beginning. Was it was always about commitment and storing value for Pulse Chain and creating like a protective layer from all of the JEETs that existed out there. Now, it's crazy because the price action was so crazy from the beginning. Like inevitably there was profit taking here in a couple places. And then you had like the 98K top, which ended up with crazy downside price action. But generally the trend has been up and to the right for over a year and a half almost now. And so any single player of any single one of these whales that comes from all different corners of the Pulse chain decides to get out, they're limited in their power and their scope to keep the price down forever. Unlike Hex, where if a coordinated group of malicious whales gets together, then they're acting predatory, they could keep the price down for years. And that's what we've seen. And so this token does come from a different angle of trying to preserve value in the chain and those guys that stuck with it and believed and curated it and protected it and stood by me during those tough times. Those are the guys that are going to be the most handsomely rewarded over the long term. And honestly, the biggest players that are in this are huge already outside of this coin, so their need to sell is limited as well, which is another like something that doesn't really get talked about much either. Is like these guys' bags are absolutely massive, and they're in this for more. They're in this for glory in their own right, just as much. So this is a protective layer for my community and for anyone else who wants to jump on board and swim with the whales.
Yeah.
Hex Monkey says, I love how it indirectly encourages long-term hex stakes, synergy, and bullish. And yes, in the way that the liquidity will be bonded, which you'll find out once the coin is launched, once the contract is launched, that's when you guys are going to find out about what we're going to do that's different on liquidity. I've never seen it done before yet in this way. And so I'm just as curious as probably anybody to see what happens when we do that. Now this is the AXiS price in USD. Before I get off this page, I just want to show the Pulse price. The Pulse price is like insane. So if you look at this chart, and anybody that's a TA guy looks at this chart on a monthly chart, this is what this chart's been doing for the first 2 years, or first year and a half rather. Literally just continuously just goes. This is linear, by the way. This is not a logarithmic chart. But this is against Pulse. It just goes up for a few months, retraces and tests. So you can look at this in terms of support and resistance. So there's a key level there. Let me double this down here. So you get support resistance flipped. You get another support and resistance flip here in April when Solid X launched. Huge shout out to Firewell and the Solid X crew. And now here we are playing with this new resistance level here. So it just continuously on the linear chart has been able to overperform Pulse. And this is because there is a group of benevolent whales behind this token that cares about it and doesn't see the need. They would rather store their value in this thing for the long haul than destroy it. And when they do destroy it, which has happened in the past, what you get is these wicks or these little red monthly candles. That's it. And then they're out of coins and they can't hurt it anymore. and we just have first movers advantage in so many ways with this token. Like I want the community to recognize it and appreciate it for what it is, but you don't need to participate in it. You can just stand idly by and watch it happen. Or you can get in on the COM and HEX side, or you can get in on the ALiVE instant rebate side, or you can ratio trade it, or you can just stand by and watch it, or you can get in into the solid X, or play the X game, or get into the future add-ons for Fire, or you can get into the 2 solid pool. There's ways to leverage. You can get into PDI, which has a tight bond with solid X and AXiS. There's enough connected layers to this in this web. There's a connection to UFO and PTGC. We're trying to build out a network of adoption here, guys. We're trying to build out something much bigger than just pump and dumps. And so, we think that we've solved for it with the fusion. And so, hopefully you guys will learn more about COM, learn more about ALiVE. It's coming out this month. I'll play the video back one more time for you guys so that you can see Mark's work in the full. And I appreciate everyone for coming for this part. And after this, we will get into mechanics and we'll demo out some commitments and talk a little more about the mechanics. So sick, dude. So sick.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at all these videos. Man, I've watched this video so many times and it's still satisfying to watch. It's so nice.
I'll give you a plug, Markable. But I think people who have other things that they're doing, they should be talking to you about getting videos done.
Speaking of, you're going
to
be getting one of those from somebody. They asked if you were available for work or not. And I was like,
oh yeah.
He's like, who made that video? I was like,
yeah, just
my
reach out,
man. Well, no, I was like, my right hand man.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, is he available for work? I was like, well, because you asked so nicely, how about you hit him on Telegram?
Well, it's crazy. I made the joke when we first saw the first version that you don't even need a token. Just do the video.
Just do the video.
Because it's pretty impressive. Yeah.
The thing is, often people send me requests and say, "Hey, you want to make a video for me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, cool." So many times it actually happened that someone doesn't even have a logo, and it's like, okay, so what should the video look like then? I don't know. And it happened so many times that I basically created the entire feeling for someone's brand. And you wouldn't notice that or think about that when you say, hey, make me a video. But making you a video basically means that I have to figure out what your brand should look like, feel like, sound like, almost smell like.
Right.
And what I noticed is really cool, and I really appreciate that I'm here and that I could have that I can help you, AXiS, and I can help you, Crispy, that we're building something. It happens so many times that I make a video for someone and then that's it, and then it doesn't really get the usage that it deserves, or that it not all the juice gets squeezed out, let's say. And
well, I'll give you. Can I start? Let me start with something positive. I'll say it very positive, because I fall the other way, right? Like I think a lot of people who are founding something or they're starting projects, the last thing on their mind is that they need a nice video,
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's not like, I mean, the downside of that is, of course, in terms of attracting eyeballs, right? It's just huge, right?
Yeah, and it's just like the thing is that, well, first of all, you get more attention, and people like it, and um it gets more real estate in people's minds, even subconsciously. But also, as a founder yourself, or as someone who is creating a brand, it helps so much in refining your story and refining your message to your audience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, most of the time, you have no idea what your brand looks like, basically, or what,
A little bit
like,
toned down.
how it's perceived, or it's hard for you yourself to understand your position. And once you get a video, well, like your video, for example, it's like, before that, you just you just showed data, and that's what you did. With the video, it gets kind of like a, yeah, I would just say that it gets its own perimeters, let's say, of where it exists, or where your data exists. Let's say you're creating kind of your own universe, which basically is what a brand is. It's it gives yourself also some handles of how you could perceive yourself, and and
Yep.
yeah, materialize, let's say.
I didn't know I needed a video until we made one.
Exactly, yeah. And that's why I really like that I can be here, because you guys actually appreciate it and understand its power. And
Mm.
it's
Well, I think
often, as an artist, it's very hard to communicate that to people.
well, I still do my streaming, right, every week. So
Uh-huh.
I'm talking about Hex and all the technical stuff. I swear to God, people just tune in to see the video. That's it.
Yeah, I take that as a compliment.
They're like, I get to see it again. I have it on my channel. Like, you can go play it whenever you want. Just like,
Uh-huh.
just, regular shuffle, man. Just boom, boom. Replay.
We appreciate it, Mark. You do great work. You really do. And
So let's talk about.
there's probably much more to come from you, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So I wanted to just quick run through this list with you guys
Yeah,
here
let's
and
do it.
talk a little bit about kind of like, if you're new to this whole idea of ALiVE, where you can start getting your mind, wrapping your mind around it. So first and foremost, ALiVE starts with 0 tokens. There are no tokens on launch. There's no pre-allocation. There's no pre-mint. The only way that ALiVE can be minted is because somebody burned and locked AXiS for a long time. If you burn and lock AXiS for a very short amount of time, they're not getting enough coins to make any impact in the system whatsoever, and they're just helping increase the value of everyone else's bag, because they're just deleting coins for no reason. So
Would you mind mentioning, as you go through this, the correlation to, or not correlation, but the relation to how COM actually works as well with us?
Yeah,
That
I mean,
makes
and I'm
sense.
happy for you to jump in there. Yeah. Well, and so in COM, the COM inflation comes from Hex being staked, and it's really, really doesn't inflate unless you go longer than 10 years. So what's the multiple between a 1-year stake and a 15-year stake? I mean, you're talking like a 50x difference in the amount of COM that gets minted from a Hex stake. I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah, it's very high.
And so, like, it's really not you're not getting any COM if you're staking Hex for less than 10 years. Like, you're just not getting anything that's going to really move the needle on it. So what that really means is that all of the COM that exists today came from the first 4.5 years of Hex stakes. And so just assume this, if the only new COM inflation that's going to come out is going to come from new max length stakes, and everything else is already minted or can't be minted, right? So, and it's competing with the T-share rate. So the T-share rate's always going up. So not only do you have to stake more hex for max length to get more COM, but you're also competing against the T-share rate, which is always going up. So it's basically what that means is that there's not going to be a lot more COM minted in the future from start payouts, unless there's a lot of hex being staked for 15 years going forward. Then yeah, you could say that you're getting a decent amount of COM. So this gives us like a 8-year window where until like a lot of the big end stake bonuses come off, which I don't want to get into that quite yet. But the point is that you have like 8 years where COM is going to be really, really scarce. And so if any amount of that circulating COM supply is tied up in believers' hands, they can basically take the chart from, it's up 500x from the bottom against Pulse or so, and run it up even higher. And you can kind of see that here on the logarithmic chart. This isn't even the full history. This is just from some point in the beginning. I guess this is the full history here. It says 198x against hex, against USD. I'm sorry, 198x. At the peak, it was up 687x against the dollar from the beginning. And so that's just the beginning of COM, where there was just a few people market making it, creating a market for it. And so this is important because it presses upon everyone that COM is already really scarce, and it's really only in the hands of the believers. And when people buy COM, what they're really saying is, I want to put my dollars into marketing 15-year hex stakes going forward. I want new guys to be able to come in, buy a lot of hex and stake it for max length to get the instant rebate from the COM, because that's where I want my marketing dollars to go into. So it's a different concept. It's basically like saying, I'd rather buy COM and see the next 100,000 people adopt hex and stake it for a long time to increase the value of the whole system for everybody, than go buy hex cheap and sell it at the top of the cycle. That's basically the difference. Is the COM guys are long-term value investors, and the hex guys are a mix of hex staker class guys and hex cycle guys that are just trying to play for the cycle to dump the top. So it's a different investor profiles for this. Now, where ALiVE comes into this is it's only minted. It's more capital efficient, because in hex, yes, you push out that hex tokens that gets locked up for max length for new inflation. That gets pushed out for a long time, but the principal and interest gets minted and comes back. Plus the COM start bonus and end bonus gets minted back. But in this system, the AXiS that gets burned is literally permanently burned and transforms its value into ALiVE. So they're more tied together, and they're more representative of a fusion of a single market cap than they are two separate tokens, even more than the hex COM fusion. And this is because you're literally taking AXiS and you're burning it, and then you're minting ALiVE based on that burnt. It's like pushing it through a system and changing it, or it's like a caterpillar cocooning for 8 years, and then it comes out as more metamorphosis into a butterfly. In this system, even more tight. They're more tightly fused together than hex and COM are even. So I think that should be sufficient of an example of both supply and demand dynamics on both systems, at least to start. And why the differences between them. So because in AXiS, there's a community supply of around 500 tokens right now, and theoretically that should only go down. At least it should go down at a rate that any new AXiS inflation that comes into the system is less than the amount being burned away. At least that would be like good monetary policy. So it's interesting for sure that it is both COM and ALiVE are more capital efficient. And they're basically saying, we're willing to buy COM and ALiVE to keep the instant rebates up, to incentivize more new adoption from new players by scratching that instant gratification itch and lowering their risk profile when they come in initially. So you're taking away some of the risk by paying them up front. And that's not like any one single player. It's the market as a whole valuing these two tokens and giving them a price and finding out where there's the maximum market efficiency and the most adoption and onboarding into the system with the least amount of future liabilities. And that's kind of where the instant rebate should trend toward, is where you're getting the most amount of new people into the system and adopting it and locking in for the long haul and committing and being a part of it and being part of the cult. and with the least amount of liabilities, because if the systems appreciate too quickly, then actually the system incurs more liabilities in the short term, because people are way higher in profit too quickly, and so there will be some profit taking that occurs, and so the system needs some time to self-correct. And that's kind of what we saw with Hex.
And that's what you see a lot, is that people get excited, and when they're launching their tokens, or and things go up too quickly, and too many of the wrong people get in for too much, and they become too big of a liability, and then you basically lose control of your project or your product. And the only thing literally that can cure it is time and waiting, and let it bleed. And that hurts so many projects. And I think you've done a very good job in finding some kind of balance, and being very conservative in growing, while simultaneously growing very quickly in value. And it's a very interesting combination that I haven't seen before. And always told you, hey, the AXiS chart is so clean. I can actually learn the most from that chart, and I can actually have the purest actionable signal from the AXiS ALiVE chart, because the holder base is so easy to understand. And for ALiVE, that's going to be exactly the same thing, because the only way you can get ALiVE is through AXiS. And it's
To your point here, yes, you can clearly see here on the price chart. I mean, it just makes higher price floors forever so far. AXiS is scarce and does get redistributed on every cycle. You could say that there's 1, 2, 3. We're in our 4th cycle here in terms of like parabolic waves up and down, and these are big. Like, these are 10x ranges, 15x ranges.
And that's because liabilities are taken care of, and they are you can oversee them, let's say, you can handle them. But if you would have done some kind of ridiculous launch, and you airdrop AXiS everywhere, and you kind of disperse all that energy everywhere, then you're gonna have a forever sellable token, let's say. You're always gonna have overhead pressure, and never really a team of holders that wants the thing to go up, because we want the thing to go up, basically.
It's that
you never have a unified front, let's say.
Yeah, it's that age-old saying that I tell my community members. It's like, do you want to have $100,000 today, or do you want to have $1,000 a day forever? And like, I really believe with this particular token that, you know, all things staying the same and getting better over time with better tools, better transparency, you know, better refined set of holders. It's just going to be the same thing, but better forever. And then the TVL, remember, this coin started with a TVL of $1,200. And it was literally only built as to be an educational tool to show liquidity dynamics, technical analysis, price action, and chain analysis, which it's been a great teacher of those 3 things. And it continues to be to this day, but it also came with incredible wealth generating performance, which has been just like a blessing, right? 100% blessing. And so, like, you know, it continues to refine a set of holders. I forget what I was going to say on that note, but it'll come back to me. So the other thing too with this is, like, ALiVE has unit bias. So like an AXiS, yeah, there's like, it's a $22,000 coin. Like, not everybody can feel like they're getting a meaningful portion of the supply. Now, I would go back and use this tool made by Crispy Man to show you guys, well, it's not as big as you guys think it is. Like, there's only 495 coins in the circulating supply on market, in the community supply, with only 800 holders. And that means that the market cap is only $11 million, which is not that big. It's a tiny little baby market compared to like Hex, which has like a $39 million market cap, or like Pulse Chain, which is like a $200 million TVL. I meant to say TVL, not market cap. Like, we're talking in terms of liquidity. Like, these other ones dwarf little baby AXiS with a $22,000 price tag, but only 495 coins out there. And so I still feel like even today, like, there's so much opportunity here to store more value on the chain and give people an option through the ALiVE to get more, feel like they're getting more units of the system. So AXiS Live is a system, a fusion of 2 coins into one. And so, you know, if you can get, you know, ALiVE price will be lower because there will be way more units of ALiVE than there will be of AXiS, because the way that the calculation breaks down is you get the number of coins that is burned times the number of days equals the number of units that gets minted from the starts and end payouts. And so just for example, like there is a theoretical maximum number of tokens that can be minted. And it's and let's say that, and I've done the calculation before. It's like if you take 495 tokens and you burn them, you lock and burn them for the max length, which is 20 days or 8 years, you can mint about 1.3 million ALiVE, but only like 129,000 of those is circulating. And then the other 1.2 million of them, that doesn't come off till year 8, plus the half of the AXiS that got locked. So it really, what it does is it transports that AXiS market cap way out into the future, and 80% of the ALiVE gets transported way out into the future. And now you're just dealing with a circulating supply of about 20% of that $11 million market cap that I showed you right here. So I know I'm talking fast, and you'll have to come back and listen to this over and over again to try to like really break it down. But I've ran all the theoretical numbers, and theoretically, if all of these coins were burned and locked on day 1 for max length, this circulating market supply of AXiS would go to 0, and the circulating market cap of ALiVE would be around $2 to $3 million at current price. And current price would look at something like I think it was like $60 or something per token. So it's like way cheaper. I would anticipate like the coin launch is probably going to launch at a really cheap price, but they'll also start with 0. So it's going to be very illiquid in the beginning, and it's going to have very few coins on the market. So the market cap is going to be super, super low for ALiVE when it first launches. So it's got unit bias, it's got market cap, it's audited and immutable, meaning if the front end goes down, you can still write directly to the blockchain, so it can't go anywhere. It's modular. It's got no admin keys. There's no pre-mint, no pre-mine. It has to be minted from existing community supply. ALiVE does not have the gas issue, so you're never going to run into the issue where you have to calculate rewards based on the sload function, because that's not how the code's written. And so it's protected from that issue. So no matter what, gas is going to be a non-issue. When ALiVE commitments get emergency end staked, if they're emergency end staked before you're halfway through the commitment, both the AXiS that gets locked and the ALiVE and the end payout gets permanently burned forever, meaning that nobody gets those coins. Nobody gets the end payout of ALiVE. Nobody gets the AXiS. That all gets permanently burned, which means everybody else's value goes up, and then the guy that hit the EES before halfway doesn't get anything back. So when you go to do that, there's a big warning that pops up that says, please, you realize that you're about to nuke your entire position. Do not do this, basically. And then if you type in, yes, I'm willing to do this, it'll kill the position, basically. And that's a preventative measure for in case somebody gets hacked within the first half of their commitment, so that the whole system doesn't have to take the hit because some jackass got hacked. So it's
on testnet, I even tried it, and it took me a while to actually do it, because I had to figure out, I actually have to put in the capital letter and a comma. Mm-hmm. So there's literally no way. Maybe even hackers will just think, never mind.
Yeah.
But it's a good security for hackers.
And so then after halfway, if you decide like you got your ALiVE, let's say it was an 8-year commitment and you're on year 5, and your ALiVE the ALiVE that you got in the past, you long since sold that for a profit, and now your AXiS is worth like 10x what it was when you got in. Well, you could theoretically end that early, and the ALiVE end payout gets permanently burned, but you get your AXiS that was locked returned to you. So there is a very real situation where some people may need money in a pinch, and so they'll have to end early. And so then that ALiVE end payout, that 80% or whatever, that was supposed to be paid out on, like, let's say year 8, that's going to get permanently burned out of the system forever. But the AXiS amount gets returned to the user. So that does happen. That will happen. There will be people that are up big enough on their AXiS that they'll take the hit on the ALiVE end payout and they'll take the AXiS back because we presume it'll be worth more. So the last couple bits here, ALiVE is a self-balancing, meaning that start payouts are better earlier on, and end payouts get better for everyone as more AXiS is committed to the system. So in other words, if you come in on launch day and you commit, you're going to get a better start payout than down the road. Let's say you come in a few months later and like 150 AXiS has been committed, and now there's only 350 AXiS left in the community supply. Well, the system's going to reflect that. It's going to give you a smaller start payout, but for every new commitment that comes into the system, it increases the end payouts for everybody in the system. So the end payouts balloon based on how much more for everybody, based on how much AXiS is getting committed. So everyone wins together on the end payouts when the adoption occurs or when more AXiS is committed. This is a novel piece of the math. It's pretty awesome. This is Kodiak's baby. This is kind of what he was excited about in creating it, was this idea of, you know, to get the engine going to start payouts are better. And then as the engine starts kicking up and working and it's being adopted, that the more AXiS gets committed, everybody wins together. So this is the ultimate efficient capital burn. Like in other systems, you know, like that I will rather not name, they just burn things to burn things for no reason. And it's like, well, would it have any value if you're just burning it for the sake of burning it? But in this case, you're burning it to create something new of value. So it's a different type of system, and I'm very proud of it. I'm super proud of it.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens, man.
All right, so now this is where I'm going to ask. I know you only got like 10 minutes left. Is there anything you want to finish off with, Beard, before you take off?
I think most has been said. We're also gonna do a stream when it launches to have some kind of party.
Yeah.
Trying to get some valuable people in to see how we can make it the best stream possible. Yeah, I don't know. I think we covered most of it.
So great work on the video. I'll play the video one more time, and then when we come back from the video, Markable will be gone, but I'm going to bring up Crispy, and we're going to talk about the liquidity web.
Yeah. So before I leave, anyone that wants something done, like a video, you can reach out to AXiS, and he will forward you, or you can go to what is my Twitter handle? Proof of Beard.
Yes.
I think, yeah, Proof of Beard. And that should do it. Just send me a message and we can always discuss. I've been doing this for 3.5 years, I think, for the community, and I'm just here to improve the community, man. Just everything about it just needs to grow, and it needs to get even better. It has transformed my life, and I think we can do a lot for this world as long as we work together. So I'm always happy to talk and to work out some cool things. Yeah, thanks AXiS for giving me such a cool position in this community. I appreciate it a lot, man.
You're welcome. All right, we'll see you out with the video. Thanks so much for your hard work. Appreciate it.
See you.
See you, Markable.
See you, man.
All right, Crispy man. You've been working on some tools that's going to help. That's helped give us some insight on what the Pulse chain liquidity webs look like for Hex, for Pulse, for the Solid Index, for all the tokens. And
Sure.
I'm very proud to present. I'm going to pull up now that liquidity web. I'm going to be pulling up now PHEX, AXiS, and COM for this example. And then we can branch out and talk about whatever else you want to talk about in regards to how you created this and what you think is valuable about it. So here it is. This is the liquidity web. I'm going to shrink it down so it's very, very simple to look at. Simply put, these are two nodes that represent the TVL of LP backing and including the value of the token that you're seeing. So PHEX, there's a $38 million TVL on it, and AXiS is a $1.3 million TVL on it currently. Maybe if I branch this out now and I show you all of the connected pairs, you'll see what I mean. Boom. It's very Spider-Man like.
Yeah, it's a web. It's a web, man.
So what are you doing here? What do you got going on, and what's the value in having something like this available for us?
Well, I think the genesis. So we'll just start with this. This is as much information as I have available to me right now, right? So there are other sources of data out there right now. This includes the PulseX, 9mm, 9-inch Uniswap, Desktop, a bunch of the ones that are readily available. Not all sources are available, right, on the blockchain to me to be able to get the data like our PHEX. But what it does is, even though it is a subset of all the liquidity that's out there, what we're able to do is visualize the connections, right? And because we're doing some color coding, I'm doing color coding with them based on size. We're changing the size of nodes based on the amount of liquidity, or in some cases the amount of volume, etc. Right? What you can do is pretty quickly kind of nail down, when you pull up a token, exactly what the largest pairs are, and they're also filterable, right? So we can actually change the sizes if we don't want to look at something that's less than $1,000. We can just focus on the top ones. And I think what it is a visual representation rather than looking at tables of data, right? And the idea being that when you drill into something like Hex, you can see the largest pairs. You can see which ones are providing the most volume, and so the web is kind of bringing that together so we can actually look at the tokens, how they're interacting, right? Because it at least for me, I can just give you like an anecdotal. Like if I take two stables and put them together on the screen and I'm looking at them, I'm kind of thinking a stable is a stable. If I'm looking at USDT or USDC or even DAI, right? My thought would be that the system would be pushing volume through all of those, right? But when you look at them and you actually look, you say, well, I'll go create a pair and go test it. The pair might not get any bid at all, right? And so what founders can do and market makers can do with this, and people who are looking to earn off of LP, is go see which ones are actually performing. Not just looking at data in a table. So it's that visualization that we're getting.
So I'm going to use this just to kind of keep with the theme of the show here and talk a little bit about it, and then we'll branch off into some of the other stuff to close out the stream. But to start here, guys, this is just Hex on the left, and it's got that big $39 million liquidity web, and that's all these connected pairs that have more than $10,000 of TVL and more than $1,000 of 24-hour volume. So we have it filtered down to at least that as a requirement to show up on screen. And then you have AXiS here on the upper right, and then little baby COM is down here on the bottom right. Now, keep in mind that something that you may not know is this isn't tracking the FUX pools yet, but it may in the future. But this is tracking all of V2 and V3 positions on 9mm, 9-inch, and the PulseX V1 and V2 pools. So it's tracking most of the liquidity on Pulse Chain. Obviously it's still development and work in progress, and so it's not maybe 100%, but it gives us a really clear idea of what's going on here. So,
yeah. And one of the things that, listen, hats off to P-Hux, right? To Fux, right? And to Fux and everything that's going on over there. So it's not that those aren't important. They are important. We just don't have access to the data at the moment to be able to present it. But, the bulk of the volume on chain is going through V1. And so that's here. The second greatest is V2 on PulseX. So PulseX V1, V2. And then after that, I'm not keeping score, but I mean, after that, it's the 9-inch and or 9mm that get the most, bid. And so we're capturing what I think is most important first.
yes, the biggest pools with the main RH core coins is what is most important. And then you can branch out from there. And some things that come to mind is like what we'll get into in a second, which is like, the Atropa farms, the Tropa and PDI and Teddy Bear, and looking at that web, or like PTGC and UFO, looking at that web, or looking at the solid index in that web. It does draw a very clear picture of how these circuits are created, right? This idea of like coins are creating circuits or energy flows between them. And being able to break that down visually is really powerful. For example, you could see that there's 2 connection points between AXiS and Hex, 1 connection point between AXiS and COM, and then 3 connection points between COM and PHEX. And what that effectively is saying is like there's 3 pools that connect COM to PHEX on those named dexes. There's 2 major pools here connecting AXiS to Hex, and there's 1 pool connecting COM to AXiS currently. So what this does is it creates a circular loop of value where arbitrage bots can trade between these tokens and create energy between them, and loops of money flowing between these things in any sort of order. And when you break this down and look at the web as a whole, and you look at the whole chain, you can really get some clear insights into stuff. So before we go on and look at other stuff, I just want to say with AXiS ALiVE, what that's going to do in the terms of the COM and PHEX is, number one, look, PHEX is a $38 million pool, and little baby AXiS is only like $1.4 million pool. TVL. Yeah. So this little baby AXiS thing isn't going to be able to drag around the price of PHEX. But for us to be able to affect PHEX over the long term, the only thing we can really do is connect to COM or another smaller hex derivative to help change the behavior of the staker class. So if AXiS and ALiVE, I'm going to we'll assume that ALiVE launches, right? And there's this synergy between these coins. Well, if AXiS and ALiVE are increasing in value, that can then pull up the valuation of COM, because this little $200,000 liquidity web of COM's TVL will track and trace AXiS and ALiVE so long as there's a big enough liquidity pool between them. And so then, yes, if these raise in value, that's not going to affect the hex price directly. But if COM goes up high enough, it may be just enough to build the TVL amongst this liquidity web and incentivize people to buy hex and stake it for 15 years, because the COM reward will be good enough. It'll pay them or incentivize them to come in and buy and stake hex for the long term. So we're trying to solve the demand problem in cryptos by adjusting it at the behavioral level and not through brute force of just the hex price.
Yeah, there are actually people who do this right now, that they're staking very long stakes on hex in order to get COM. It's a real thing, and so with sliding scale, right? The higher the instant rebate, the more opportunity will occur. So the higher the COM price, right? The higher the instant rebate. And if COM is tied to other things, right? I mean, listen, guys, you have a token out there that can drive up the price of COM, and you want to do that, do it. But with the example with ALiVE, you're going to have some volatility that'll come in because of that, and the potential that it's connected up with COM, and it will drive the COM up and down as well, because COM, as you mentioned, right, you can see it visually on the screen. The liquidity pools are smaller, right? And we know that because they're smaller, less economic energy will make them overperform or underperform, if you want to say it that way. But you can see the volatility that can be created.
Yes. Smaller input capital costs and just modest amounts of volume can make COM so valuable so fast that somebody could come in and get a significant chunk of value from staking long. And if you do it enough times, like it's at what point does the market realize or understand that this is a powerful tool for leveraging this idea of marketing or automatic marketing of long-term staking commitments? If this thing's going up and it's convincing these guys to stake a lot more hex for a lot longer, that's increasing everyone's value of everyone's bags. And it's really, anybody that's got a token on this chain can bond to COM and do this. Like if your coin is going to be good and going to go up in value, why wouldn't you bond it to COM? Because then you get more COM and it's already scarce. Like I think there's only like 30 quads left, and a quad is like a $25,000 thing, but it was only a $5,000 thing 120 days ago. So like that's how fast this thing goes up and down in price. It literally does. It's literally been trading in a 10x range for like about a year now. But once it breaks that range of the upside, well, what? It's like, you get the next round of users that comes in, right? I don't know. That's what's so fascinating about this system, and being able to build on it is pretty amazing. So I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic on what this thing can do over the long term. I think it's a good incentive to get people to commit more hex for longer and to give people more of a reason to play the game. And I'm going to say something controversial here that Johnny Sachs has kind of tried to instill in some of us, which is that he believes that buying COM today and buying COM 120 days ago when it was $5,000 for a quad is going to make you more money than staking a hex for 5555. Blasphemous, I know, but that's how much he believes in COM. So something to think about.
Yeah, and the reason he feels that way is because of the scarcity model that's there, and the liquidity, and how the liquidity is tied with hex. Of course, it depends on hex existing, right? So we're not saying that people aren't going to stake hex, but it's an opportunity as well, right? All because of these dynamics, the liquidity dynamics, and how it goes up. And so one of the things unscripted that I've been thinking about has been when Fire launches, when ALiVE launches, do I want to get ALiVE and pair it up with my favorite token, which might be Fire, right? And why would I do that? And so then there's other tokens that might be launching that might be doing the same type of thing. Be thinking about, well, we have the greatest opportunity when new tokens have the greatest amount of availability on the market, in terms of units, and the prices are lowest, because then those can create huge liquidity positions later as the system moves along. Like I took a look just offhand at one of the earlier pairs that I had put up with AXiS early on, right? And I actually had pulled the pair down. And then I looked at it, I was like, that's a couple $1,000s worth of liquidity. Well, that liquidity that was set up in V2, it should be V1 on PulseX. A lot of people don't realize that PulseX keeps a little tiny bit of the liquidity. Well, that little bit of liquidity that was left behind, that appreciated in value to permanently burned, $2,000-$3,000 worth of liquidity between the tokens. That's just out there, and it's available to the community to be able to utilize.
It's pretty crazy. I think I just want to show you guys like how big the web is. So if I break this down to just simply the top tokens on this chain, so that's anything with a liquidity base of 1 million dollars paired with it or more, this is what you get. And it's going to take a second to load in here, but this is the web.
It's a
So
lot of data.
I'll spread it apart now. Boom. This is the liquidity web of all of the major coins and all of their connections. And I can drag these around. Like here's Hex out here. Here's PUSDC, Atropa. Here's Pulse out here. Obviously, this is the big hog out here. And so you could actually kind of drag these around and try to find the connector points, or you can filter this out. Now, this is a tool that's available to you guys if you go sign up for hexfire.io, which I highly recommend if you're a power user and you want edge. These are the best tools that you're going to get in Pulse Chain that's available to regular users. Like, yeah, Richard might have his own little, or some of these power users that work in like closed groups, like these whale groups. But I think this is the best thing that's available for like the consumer grade data sets and tools. I mean, this is something that Crispy did professionally for a long time. So he's taking that expertise and now he's giving you a way to visualize all these connected pairs, right? And so you can see kind of more easily what's going on. I know this is messy, but now look, I can come back in here and break this down and go, I only want to see tokens with $50,000 and more than $1,000 of 24-hour volume, let's say. And then it'll get rid of all of the extraneous, like little baby pairs, and it'll only just put in things that have relevant $1,000 of volume or more over the last 24 hours. So it got rid of some of these, but not a ton. And you could like basically come in here and filter down to the level that you want.
Yeah. Well, how I'll use it with ALiVE when that launches is I'll pull up the ALiVE token. I'll look for the major connections and what's catching bid. For whatever I'm going to be doing. And in that way, I can kind of understand how the liquidity will flow. Because there's a lot of different goals. So it all depends what you're trying to use the information for. But if I'm trying to market make, then what I'm trying to do is to make, in my opinion, right? I didn't go to market maker school, so I don't have a degree. If I'm trying to market make, then I'm trying to make things more efficient or create certain types of outcomes like price go up or whatever, or value in Pulse go up. And so there's not a lot of use to me putting up a bunch of pairs that have zero volume, right? I mean, it's just inactive liquidity.
So this here is just $1 million of liquidity or more, and with $10,000 of 24-hour volume. So when you break it down, this is going to lead right into what you want to say, Chris, is when you really break it down to what's really getting volume on a daily basis.
Oh, it's crazy.
This is your web. It's a very small web.
Small amount. Well, it's like even when we looked at the top tokens, yeah, I know about some of these things. And there's a difference between, and some people criticize, but well, there's a difference between, the total value locked and what the total value locked is to value, whatever it is you consider to be value. But just on the very high level, when you're looking at it, it's like, damn, man, I didn't know number 2 token from the Atropa ecosystem was one of the top tokens on the chain. Didn't know. I mean, I can guess that PDI is, but I didn't know that was one, Helgo I know about, but I didn't, I don't know what it's doing. Even though I've been talking to the guys from UFO and PTGC for a while, if you want to do a measuring contest, your token doesn't show up, but theirs show up at the top, in the top 10. So, I mean, somebody's been doing some work, to make these webs work. And then when you dig into it, you're like, wow, look at the volume, and you can clearly see where the volume's going when you really drill into it. You clearly see it. So things you would be doing is looking at what might be happening between the token that you're trying to set liquidity for that purpose. Increase efficiency, for your token, right? And sometimes people have counter, obviously have counter arguments for what they might want to do. Maybe they're looking for opportunities to expand their liquidity. Might also be looking at if you're trying to earn off of liquidity, kind of generalized statement. You want things that have a lot more volume than things that don't. General statement. But you can also kind of visualize where there could be great opportunity for V3 versus V2, which is going to be super important for exiting, right? So when people want to exit positions, people have heard me say it. I'm not sure everybody understands this, but the way I'll say it is sometimes when we look at exiting through liquidity from one token to another token, because that's really what you're doing. You're not leaving the system. You're moving from one token to another. If you got, if you're trying to move 5 figures and you've got, $5 in volume, you're not going to be as quick and as successful as something that has a very deep liquidity pocket and a lot of volume, right? Which means you might be waiting around a while, and if you're trying to, typically top sap on tokens very quickly, within a few weeks of you realizing it, and I don't mean even full cycle tops. I just mean like when something hits its top, there isn't a lot of time. Right. So if you didn't figure out that you wanted to move out of something with a V3 liquidity while it was going up, you're now chasing it on the back end going down, which just eats into whatever was the profit you were going to do that way. Anyways, there's like 1,000 different things we could do.
Yeah, you're getting into like 401 level strategies here.
It's crazy. I have a couple of clients that just like they've gone into this and I don't think they've come back out.
So this is awesome.
They're still digging.
I'll go into now the tracked pair stuff. Like, look at this, guys. Like, you can see APY breakdowns on, take your pick. Oh, you like Tangang? Let's see what Tangang's been doing. Oh, 24-hour APY.
Yeah, these guys are like the masters of 2% V3s, man. Another thing, if you're so that's another one, right? Up at the top is Dick with butt. That there's a lot of tokens, man. We're involved in a lot of different things going on in the chain. I don't have my eyes on everything, right? And so did I know that's a top token on Pulse Chain? Would I have said that? Yeah, I saw enough Sami videos. I would say, oh yeah, it's a big deal. People are interested in it, but I didn't know it was a top token. And those guys really craft webs that force value to go through all their different legs,
Yep, I do know. Look at this. Did you expect to see Trio and Hex as the best performers?
I saw that today, man. Now that could be somebody taking, this is very, you always have to go do some more research, right? To see what's going on. But I'm going to guess in this case, somebody, a few hours ago, 24 hours ago, within that time frame, wanted to exit from one to the other. And had done some work, and then it created some volume. Now that you're looking at Uniswap pools, so in this case, these are V2 Uniswap pools. Those are the forked ones. They weren't fully emptied. People are actively, adding value into Uniswap on Pulse Chain. It does happen, though you have to do some work to get there. You might be using, AXiS Hedron clone, or you might be doing it manually. But anyways, what you'll also see is when you look at pairs like this, if you think of it like in terms of electronic type circuit, there is probably you could actually pull it up if you just do a search by Trio / Hex, and you'll see the list of Trio and Hex pairs that show up, right? So it's likely, for some reason, there was enough volume between different pairs on the chain that all of a sudden the ARBs woke up and said, oh, look, there's this fat pocket over Uniswap nobody's touched. Right. And so those ARBs went in there. This is the likely explanation. The ARBs went in there and said, oh man, I can get Hex to go serve this, but I have to have Trio, or somebody wanted to do a big fat buy on Trio, and they went the other way. In any case, what it did is it went and used that pair to ARB through. And the speed on it tells the story, because the liquidity is only at 2,800, but the volume's 6.3. in the last 24 hours. So that just means this is running really hot. And so a lot of times what I'm looking for with these is if I was like interested, and I'd be like, look at that. I got some trio. Maybe I would like to, do some value with that. What, some sort of produce some value through LP. It might cause me to go dig in and go look a little bit further and see, well, have we had consistent volume? Has there been consistent volume? And if there has been consistent volume, why? And then perhaps set a pair. Maybe I would simply, evaluate the trio pulse pair or the trio hex pair. And then if I really wanted to do that next level, I might be looking at V3.
And so, if people talk, there's a lot of people got a hard on for the PTGC and UFO ecosystem right now, and rightly so. But let's see, like, what are they doing for volume? And how real is it when they say like that the bots are arbing their pools, and then it's money that's feeding back into their fee-based token system, and like when you really break it down here, X, which is one of the tokens in that loop, is one of the only non-tax tokens, interestingly enough, and that's getting the highest APYs right now. So for them to be able to bond X to the tax tokens, maybe that's a way to add volume. So like this one here, oh, never mind. That's PTGC Rat Pulse for 9.33% on 24 hours. But it is interesting because it gives you a way to kind of see, okay, if I want to look at specifically like how much is PTGC getting, and it's not really getting hit that much right now. And if you go back and look at the chart on like a 4 hour, maybe it's been kind of range bound. It's been basically in an 8% range. It did on this main pair, it did $66,000 of volume over a day and 4 hours. And that really all that amounted to in terms of APY for liquidity providers was very little, right? But keep in mind, this system is different in the sense that this is burned off liquidity that's locked and burned forever. So that it serves a different purpose over here. But this is a way to track how much value is getting from our bots is getting taxed and then going back into the system as well.
Yeah, and to qualify this a little bit, you see how all those like kind of I don't know what color that is, kind of like the beige kind of color at the bottom there with all these with very tiny amounts of volume. So that's pretty normal. This is why, as what I was saying with pairs. If you clear PTGC, just go to all track pairs, and we look at the list, and you go towards the bottom, you're going to see that there's going to be pair after pair after pair that show almost no volume, right? And so that's people that have put up value, and it's basically laying there stagnant for a while until the volume increases in the chain great enough that all these things start getting engaged by the ARBs, right? Because as an example, not picking on RH negative, I don't know what the hell that is, but that's the second one up from the bottom there on your screen. Who's trading PTGC RH negative? Probably nobody, right? It's probably just gonna have a lot of demand, $2, and so that's all ARB stuff. Now, what would happen though is if suddenly there was so much demand for PTGC that it's going to go up, that even though it's a tax token, the ARBs will eventually figure it out, and then they'll come in and they'll go buy that PTGC when they can make money off of it, and that in turn, causes the RH negative to go up.
So you could take this like kind of meta analysis of the PTGC token here, and then you can go over to the liquidity web, click on all nodes and clear, and we can just look at PTGC now and see, okay, what's PTGC looking like on its own, isolated. And this is what you get. And each one of these, so I'll just name them because it's probably small on your screen, but
it's not too bad.
Give it a second to load in here, guys. My internet's been a little bit slow today. Speaking of, let's see. So we got, just give it a second.
Yeah, it's got to load all the data pairs over there. It's cool that it knows it's there, though.
Okay, so $4 million total on PTGC. it's got pretty decent size pairs with Hex, Atropa, PDI, Teddy Bear, PulseX, UFO, Rat Pulse, Inc., AXiS. And then in smaller level, it's got a small little Solid X, Rat BTC, a small Rat Pulse, and then there's that RH negative token.
Mm-hmm.
I can actually go on here and add volume, and then that can help give us some insight into what kind of volume these are doing.
Yeah, exactly what they're going to be getting. Yeah, and when I've started looking deeper into some of these, you begin to realize that all pairs are not, created equal, so to speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, still thinking is running on the left-hand side there. Yeah, a lot of data. I think we have on Pulse Chain. There's over 100,000 different. There's over 100,000 different pairs that are out there. And so one of the requests I've had from people is like, well, because different people have different opinions. They'll be like, well, wait a minute, that RH negative token, that's a secondary token. So it's not, it's token to token. So it's not just true value. And so some of the things we're kind of experimenting with is how do you show, pairs just to Pulse, just to, just over to value. If you considered Pulse Inc., the RH tokens to be value tokens plus, plus your stables, that would give you a clear picture of path to value, right? And again, not picking on PTGCs, really any token doesn't matter, right? You look at the pairs, and there's 8 pairs, and 9 of the 7 of the 8 is all to another token that has no way out, and then one of them is to Pulse. Well, that's kind of a different risk profile than if I'm looking at one that has Hex, Pulse, Inc., PulseX, because those are all paths, right? Because I'm not at risk if suddenly somebody pulls down that one pair that I lose it.
So this, it's taking its time loading today, but I'm going to go back to the track pairs for a second, and we'll look and see what the solid index is looking like, and we'll kind of close out on that since we've been going for almost 2.5 hours.
Yeah,
just want to
these videos are too much.
Just want to tell everyone that I appreciate everyone for showing up today. We're going to continue the demo. We're going to go like one layer deeper into ALiVE this week, maybe Sunday. It'll be this week. I'm going to basically go on a marketing blitz now and try to get the word out and answer questions, because the system is sticky and there's a lot to learn. So far on the 24-hour APY, AXiS Rat Pulse on 9-inch V3 is happening to be the highest APY. That's a V3 pool. And then if I sort by liquidity, it looks like the solid index in general is kind of losing a lot of volume compared to where it was maybe 3 or 4 months ago. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's not to say that it's a small amount, because you're still looking at $164,000 of 24-hour volume across all the pairs. But not doing like what Solid X did on the first 9 days, where it was doing millions of dollars of volume a day. So go check out hexfire.io. I'm super proud of this tool. There's a lot of other cool tools on here, like the Puel multiple, the Mayer multiple, the golden ratio multiplier, the asset performance charts, correlation matrix charts. These are super valuable. You'll see a lot more of those on these live streams as we go throughout the bull market here. I think that's
thanks for bringing it up. I appreciate it. It's all about actionable insights.
Looks like our good old buddy 3701 is back and pumping the shit out of AXiS today. He must have liked the stream. This guy, clearly he's following us and has been for some time. He's very interesting. 3701 likes to come in and play with these charts on a pretty regular basis. So came in here and pushed us up pretty good today, 20%.
I know it's a totally different environment or methodology than I can even get my head around.
This guy's this 3701 guy. He's a massive hex whale. And he'll come in from time to time and buy up a bunch of the stronger altcoins in the market. And so credit to him on a lot of these wicks. It's pretty funny. So, hey guys, I want to show the front end one more time before we go, and then we'll close out. So for anyone that's new listening in for the first time, this is the commitment front end for AXiS-ALiVE.app. It's where you'll go to commit AXiS to turn it into ALiVE on launch day. Audited, immutable, modular, timeless, amazingly compressed code. No gas problem. It doesn't use SLOAD function to operate. Leveraging the power of the instant rebate, targeting all types of investor profiles from traders to long-term value investors, coming off the back of one of the best performing charts on Pulse Chain. It's this baby right here on log. And very simply put, I'm just going to go ahead and make a commitment here. This is testnet, so it's not mainnet. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a 1 AXiS token commitment for max length just to show you guys that it works. It says you're about to burn a half an AXiS and lock a half an AXiS for 29-21 days. Estimated start payout will be 287 ALiVE. That is approximately 1 times less ALiVE than if you would execute a full length commitment. This is a full length commitment. So just got to change the wording there. Boom, click yes. And then it'll ping my, my wallet. I think. Let me refresh. Boom. No, it's glitching. It's glitching while we're live. No, it's broken. There we go. So I'm doing a 0.1 deposit amount for 2,912 days. I just pushed that to the testnet. Transaction just completed. It'll give me a pop-up here when it's good. Yep, commitment started for 29-12 days. It'll reload in here, and that new commitment should show up here on the bottom right here, 29-12 days. So what I just did was I got 28.6891 ALiVE, which was a value of 963 testnet dollars. And I got 118 that comes off in 2,912 days, currently valued at $3,985 with an ROI at today's price of $416. I could take that ALiVE that's in my wallet now and go to PulseX and dump it for $900. And then I would only be risking like $200 because on testnet here, it's testnet AXiS is worth $10,900. So I really reduce my risk by playing the game that way. If I'm buying AXiS off market and committing it to the system, and then this $4,000 is a free roll, basically. Here's an example of a completed. By the way, for completed commitments, you don't actually. There's no penalty for not ending them, so they'll sit in the system forever. And you can just, whenever you remember that you had a commitment, you could come in here and end it. This one was completed a long time ago, and I just let it run for the demo. So I'm going to go confirm. And then this will end this commitment, and that'll be, it for testnet, the testnet demo. There's this next time we do this on Sunday, maybe this week, we'll go into the AXiS Live stats page and break down the top holders, whales, look into their wallets, like see how big they are. It's all mainnet data that is showing in there, so that's pretty cool. You guys will be able to see here on AXISLive.app all of that mainnet data already populated. So super excited about that. Yeah, so that just ended that commitment I had in there. So if I click show completed commitments, it'll say down here, I had a couple that I just ended this one here for $5.47. So that's the system, guys. Super familiar for hex stakers, going to bring value to hex and com through liquidity bonding. Hopefully you guys can just either watch us from the sideline or participate in any which way you see fit. Super excited to get it out there. It's launching this month. And as we're speaking, the AXiS price is absolutely mooning. So very cool, guys. And thank you for your participation today. What do you think, Chris? Are you excited for ALiVE? Are you ready to see COM go to the levels that makes every single hex staker have to stake 5555 forever?
Yeah, I am. I like that idea. Of course, everybody needs their own set of strategies, right? So, yeah, maybe everybody shouldn't do Quattrocinquos, but it's still a huge opportunity.
Of course. I say that a bit tongue in cheek.
Yeah, me too. I give the, I know I've gotten that criticism that, I've become the guy from last cycle who says do Quattrocinquos, right? And so
people are leaving a lot of meat on the bone. Like if you're a hex player, if you believe in hex to any degree and you're not taking some portion, even if it's just 1%, and you're staking it for 15 years on Bullchain, if you're not doing that, you're really missing out on a good easy hedge. It's free money. Like you get to year 8 and it's worth a lot more. Okay, end it early and get all your money back plus more. It's amazing, guys. Like Hex is an amazing product. We want to build on Hex and bring value to it. Shout out to the Actuator guys, the Icosahedron guys, and most importantly, in my dev Kodiak, who's building this for us to bring more value to Hex. So thanks everyone. And we'll be back with more over the weekend and into next week. AXiS ALiVE Fusion launches this month. So stay tuned.